Sanbonan Dumalang, hello, it's Simply Spissa here and welcome back to my channel, but also a special welcome to those listening to the audio podcast, Simply Do the Work. And welcome to you if it's your first time joining to me. And on that note, if you're not yet subscribed, please do hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. If you're listening to the podcast, then please subscribe, follow, share, rate, and review the podcast. So, okay, now we got that admin and housekeeping out of the way. Let me just, rant a bit because let me tell you guys, this is the second time I'm filming this video because I tried filming it yesterday, but then for some reason my phone deleted like almost all my footage. So I said, you know what? I can't risk there being issues again. So today I'm using a camera. Also want to have a little vent about just how I am struggling to find a consistent setup. Like I keep switching it up. Maybe this will be the setting that sticks for us, but we'll see. Like that little rant had nothing to do with anything. Let's get into the matter of fact for today. So what brings us here today? Let me give you all a little bit of context and background. So the YouTube video I put up before this goes live was a reaction to Zoe Mutiga's latest album, Inganekwane. And just the album itself was such a beautiful body of work. It was like, she describes it as a love letter to blackness. And even just some of the things that she said in the interviews, about the album. And I actually want to read to you guys two quotes, which really are the backbone for today's discussion. I disguised my discomfort with my mother tongue as a reverence, but in reality, even where I've had to do interviews in isiZulu, I would feel quite alienated by it. It bothered me a lot. So much of who we were before colonization is a myth. We are real people, but also a fiction of someone else's creation. Now, the first quote really resonated with me because it spoke about, I just related because I have my own experience with feeling disconnected to blackness, feeling disconnected from, black language and culture. And I actually have voiced this disconnect or frustration. I don't know what to label it, but I have voiced this concern of mine in a video I put up last year titled "What is Blackness?" And on the thumbnail I put, "Am I not black enough?" And listening to this album, it just brought all of that up. And I really had to sit down with myself and see, okay, but where does all of this come from? What does this all mean? And basically this will be a tale of how I am working to reconnect to blackness, reconciling myself with blackness. So the tale starts where I can just give you guys some context. Like my family moved around a lot when I was younger. Like I was born in Secunda, Mpumalanga. I think at some point we lived in Witbank, and then we went to Boksburg. And then from Boksburg, we ended up in the Western Cape. And there we settled a bit. We settled for about 5 years. So from the age of 3 to 8, we lived in the Western Cape. And the Western Cape, like the area we lived in specifically, was mainly a Xhosa-dominated area. So, we're a Zulu family living in a Xhosa-dominated area. And I didn't go to creche, by the way, because apparently I used to get really sick when I had to go to creche. Like my we were actually talking about it the other day, how she said literally they drop me off in the morning and I'd be fine, and then they'd get a call saying come pick your kid up because it would be bad. Like I need to be admitted to a hospital. So after all, my parents are like, we're not taking him to creche because they could see the pattern. He goes to creche, he gets sick, comes back home, recovers, he goes back to creche, gets sick again. It's like, nah, clearly something ain't right over there. But that's besides the point. So there's also at home, we're a Zulu speaking family, right? And my parents told me how apparently I taught myself English through television, through the educational shows that I watched, like Takalani Sesame, Tabang Tabong. I even remember how those shows would sometimes broadcast the same episode but in different languages. So I think that also is probably how I was also able to make these connections in my brain, because literally the first time I went to like formal education for English was for grade R when I was about 5 years old. And the school that I went to at the time had a very strict language policy. Like kids would literally be punished for speaking their mother tongues. Like I remember, because it was a Xhosa dominated area, the teachers used to always be like, "You guys are not allowed to speak Xhosa. Why are you speaking Xhosa in an English school?" And my 5-year-old brain was like, "What the hell is Xhosa?" Like, I know Xhosa, the surname, which is spelled Khoza. I know that. What is this Xhosa that the teachers speak of? Well, at the time I couldn't write, but that's besides the point. So I remember going home once, like, "Mama, what is this Xhosa that these teachers are for? Like, they are hell bent against it. These white teachers will not have it." And they're like, "Oh, it's Xhosa," but the white people pronounce it as Xhosa. And I think from there, from an early age, I was given the message that if you want to fit in, if you want to be accepted into this world, into this culture, then you need to speak their language. You need to basically reject, for lack of a better words, your own language when you're in that space, and fully embrace their language. So that was then. I mean, me being the good kid I am, I always spoke English, but I remember just seeing how other kids would get in trouble for speaking Xhosa, or how these other white kids would complain, would literally be snitching on kids, saying, "Ma'am, he's not speaking English, ma'am, he's speaking that other language." Like, I still have those memories, and it's been like, what, at least more than a decade. The math, like 12 years. Child, the math is not, we're not even going to try to embarrass ourselves with that. At least 15 years. Yeah. Yeah, it's been at least 15 years. So anyway, there was that, right? And then in 2009, we moved to where we live now, in the Vaal. And the Vaal is a Sotho-dominated area. Like, the predominant language, spoken by Black people is Sotho. And so I remember coming to, grade 4 in this, new province, getting a complete culture shock, because, for one, the school that I was at in the beginning was a multiracial school, and now in this school, most of the student population was Black. Literally, there was, in my entire, like, from grade 4 to grade 7, I can count on one hand the number of white students we had. I guess, like, even like non-Black students, I can probably count on one hand that the entire school had in the 4 years I was there, child. Yeah, 4 years I was there. Anyways, so 2009, right? We get to Vanderbijl Park, the Vaal. I go to this new school, and it was hell. For lack of a better word, it was hell, because I didn't speak the language. So, kids would come up to me and say things, and I wouldn't understand. I wouldn't know what these kids were saying, and then I would say, "No, but I know I can speak English." I'd try speaking Zulu, and I'd say, "These kids don't know what I'm saying." And so eventually, I realized, okay, cool, guess English is the way to go, because, I mean, I quickly noticed how, there wasn't this strict restriction in terms of language. Excuse me. But I had already internalized that message. So for me, it just came natural that, when I'm at school, I just speak English the whole day. And I just became known as that kid who's always speaking English. I mean, some people knew it was genuinely because, I do not understand Sotho, and they were, child, I'm choking. Hold on, excuse me. Let me drink some water. There were really great, accommodating students there, people who became my friends. But other people just labeled me as a snob. They labeled me as a coconut, trying to be white, all these things. And that's basically been the narrative of my life for at least the past 10 years. I mean, it actually dates even further than that, because I remember even in the previous video, the video that I mentioned, I talked about how when I went to emakaya, like in the rural areas, right, to visit my grandmother, the kids there used to say that I speak like a white person. I think it's because in Natal they have that specific, they have a specific accent in Natal, and so here I'm coming with my totally. And like one of my cousins actually I don't really have much memory of this. Maybe it was that traumatic, I blocked the memory out. But my cousin was saying like literally they'd be like ngumlung, wena ngumlung. And then I'd come back like angisiyena umlung. Then they would be like yabo masho njalo ngumlung ngempela. Basically I was fighting to prove that I'm not white, and they're like, nah fam, you're white. You're white. Period. In contrast to, I remember when I was I 9 or 10 years old, we went to Engut, and I remember there, just being like sanbonani ninjani, and I can't remember what we were doing, and then the lady was like, yo, lo mntana ukhuluma kamnandi, and just like literally they were calling. That lady was like calling people saying, oh my gosh, listen to this child's accent, they're so cute. It's just like these conflicting feelings, which I think as a child you don't know how to process that. You're just like, okay, it is what it is. And so this basically bringing it back to a point, right? How I just felt so disconnected from my own language, number one, because I spent so much time at school, right? And because I was speaking a lot of English, I feel like my English vocabulary grew to the detriment of like my Zulu speaking ability. I feel like my Zulu speaking ability at some point halted. At some point it stopped. I stopped developing my language skills in Zulu, even though that is my first language, even though that is my mother tongue, and my English just kept on progressing. And also I felt alienated from the Black community that I was surrounded by, because I remember vividly trying to speak the Sotho language and either A, being laughed at, which is I don't hold it personally, because I know how kids are just mean. I think a lot of us, when we look back to the things we did and said to people when we were kids, we look back now and think, damn, that was so mean. Like, why did I do that? Clearly I don't know any better. But there was that, and then, or the second alternative, like I'd try to speak to someone in Sotho and they'd be like, dude, I have no idea what you just said, please just say it in English, I do not understand what you're trying to do. And so also in Sotho I feel like my skills, I mean, I've developed to a point where I could understand, clearly understand. I remember once someone swore at me in Sotho, thinking it was in grade 5, right? So I'd been there for almost over a year, and I think he thought that I still don't understand, but I feel like when you're younger, you really pick up things really quickly. So I think I picked up the language very quickly. I think, I could actually be more fluent if I had more confidence, but that's neither here nor there. So basically, to summarize, right, what I've just said, I felt alienated from my own language, my own culture, but even just the Black community that I was surrounded by, And the reason why I said this became a consistent messaging, because even when I went to high school, okay, yeah, I first went to a high school that was similar to my primary in terms of the demographics. Like, most of the students were Black with white teachers. I remember even there being called a snob, being called a coconut, being called all of these names. And also like people saying, why don't you speak Sotho? And I think by then, because I was like 13, 14, by then I had a bit more resolve. I was like, nah, like I can understand y'all when y'all speak Sotho, because that used to hurt me so much. How when they'd speak to me, they'd speak English, but then when they say other things, they'd speak in Sotho, because, and then that used to also hurt me, make me feel some type of way, because like, damn, now I don't understand what they're saying. Or sometimes people used to also weaponize the fact, like, I do get, sometimes it's not on purpose, you don't purposefully exclude someone, but there are also times when people would weaponize, they know that you don't understand this language, so they speak about you thinking that you don't understand, and the joke's on them when you do. But anyway, this is so all over the place, child. Like, I thought, like, for once, I always complain about how my notes are a mess. For once, my notes are like, they're actually in order, but my speaking be all over the place. But you know how we do it around here. So cool. So there's that, right? And then I changed schools again. Like, I've been to 2 primary schools and 2 high schools, right? So I've been to a multiracial primary school and a multiracial high school, and also a high school and primary school where most of the students were just Black. So I've, experienced, I don't want to say the best of both worlds. Like, the language is running away, which is ironic because we're speaking about language today. But anyways, So then grade 10, I changed schools again, right? And this wasn't as traumatic as the first time I changed schools because obviously now I was a bit older, but it was a culture shock again because I went from, think about it, from grade 4 to grade 9, I was, going mostly to school with, black kids. And even, I mean, just that transition from that type of demographic of the student population to now a student population that is like multiracial. And also, I mean, there were also some other, there's some other factors about, my second high school, which I guess added to the mess because there was this sense of elitism, right? So immediately, right when I changed schools, I was put in the smart class. And the smart class was known for having the whitest black people. It was, the other, like this is just this is me just being speaking unfiltered and raw, but literally, even though not many people said this out loud, but there was this impression that the other English classes were ghetto, and then the class that I was in was the prim and proper class. And I actually remember some white person calling me an Oreo, and to this, I remember that was the first time I was even hearing that phrase. I'm just like, what? And then I thought, I'm like, oh, it's the coconut story all over again. Like, literally, it's kind of like, I can never win. I can never win. And I think the problem is, I feel like, right, when people call you out, when you as a black person are called a coconut or an Oreo, or people say you're too white, don't get me wrong, sometimes I do play into the joke, right? Sometimes it's like, yeah, haha, it's so fun. Like my friends in varsity, we were once doing like a who's most likely to, just randomly, and then they're like, yes, Fisher's most likely to marry a white person. And I love saying, yep, that is so true. There are times when you play into the jokes, but there are other times where it's a bit hurtful because you kind of in this weird place where it's kind of like both the black community and the white community are ambivalent towards you. It's kind of like, because like the whites like you because you listen to their music, you understand their lingo, you're able to speak like them, act like them, but then they don't like you too because I mean you're still black, they're still that. And then the black community, when you're with the blacks, it's kind of like, obviously they accept you because you're one of their own, you're black as well, but then, you're, if you are rather whitewashed or you enjoy certain music that isn't necessarily considered black, you're seen as a traitor, you're seen as, you don't fit in to their definition of blackness. I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. When people were labeling me, or when people label others as coconuts or Oreo or whatever ethnic slur you want to put in, it's because you don't fit into their definition, their box of what a black person should be. And that points to an issue that a lot of black people face, which is, even though we're individuals, we're treated as collectives that are supposed to represent an entire race. And it's like, if you do not check these boxes, then you're not doing it right. I was actually having a discussion with a friend of mine, I think 2 days ago, about a certain, I'm not going to name them, but a certain, I don't know are they an internet personality, Twitter influence? I don't know what to call them. I mean, I don't know what they do. I just know that they're. Oh, sorry if I bumped the mic or something. I just know that they like making a lot of controversial statements. They're a very polarizing figure, and they're well known for like one of the stands they hold is that if you're a black woman, you wear wigs and weaves, you're anti-black. And I'm like, she's basically policing people's blackness. She is deciding who's black, who's not, and if you're not doing it according to her standards, you're doing it wrong. Bye. And it's kind of like, what about personal preferences? Why is it that I have to be white to enjoy a certain type of music? Yes, certain genres of music are mostly, the space are most occupied by white people, but me enjoying that doesn't take away from my love and appreciation for my own culture. I think that's the difference, you know. I, speaking for myself right now, right? I can enjoy and appreciate someone's culture, but still recognize that it's not mine. That's the thing. At the end of the day, you know, like recently I've really gotten into like Asian entertainment, like I've been like if you know, like my friends know, I'm obsessed with Thai series at the moment, and I've recently gotten into Blackpink, you know, popular Korean pop group, and Wavy, but I'm plugging my faves right now. Wavy, which is like a Chinese pop group. Like you know, I am living for it. You know, I'm just finding it so interesting, just learning how, you know, their industry works differently and their culture. Like I'm enjoying it, but I recognize that that's not my culture. I recognize that that ain't me, you know. I still have my own culture that I love and appreciate. And I think to bring it all together, right? How I've basically been going on this journey from being disconnected from my blackness and reconnecting with it was firstly, you know, telling myself that I'm not less black than anyone. I'm just different, you know? It was identifying that I have my own story, and it might not be the same as everyone else. It might not be the same as the typical story that you hear. But I feel like nowadays, you know, the middle class black person has become a lot more common. You know, I think a lot of the times we feel like we have to be ashamed of our privilege, you know. Like you hear people speak these stories, how they went from literally nothing, and how they're able to build themselves up. And then you kind of feel guilty, like, oh my goodness, like this person had all the odds stacked against them and they did so much. It's like, look at me, I'm sitting on my privileged behind. What am I doing with it, you know? But at the same time, I still recognize those stories, because those stories are my parents. My parents literally had the odds stacked against them. My parents went to university while this country was still under the apartheid regime, you know. My parents, they always talk about how they worked really hard and they did everything that they could so that we, you know, their children, could have a better life, a better future, you know. And so I think it's important that I recognize my privilege. I shouldn't be ashamed of it. I should recognize it and use it to uplift others, you know. I was actually having an argument with a friend 2 days ago, because he was saying that systemic racism isn't an issue in South Africa, but rather the system now in South Africa is racist towards white people. And what also shook me about that is because this person is also, they're not white, you know. So I thought, I thought because they're not white, because they're a person of color, they'd have the range to understand black people's struggles. But from the conversation we had, clearly that was not the case. Like this morning, I was reading an article and I saw some statements that Helen Ziller made, and I'm just like, Helen Ziller said the same thing. I'm just like, wow, not my friend having the same views as Helen Ziller on this issue. Basically, what is the point I'm trying to make? Systemic racism is still an issue here in South Africa. It's just that, because the thing is, right, I feel like what happened in South Africa is, yes, blacks have the political power in terms of there are black people in government, but we ain't got the money. The wealth isn't with us, you know. We are still, even though there are a lot more black people who are doing well, I think, even though I recognize that, yes, I am pretty well off compared to a lot of people in this country, I believe it's my duty and my responsibility to use the privilege I have, the resources that I have, not only just to better myself and be like, okay, sorry to y'all, bye, but just the collective, you know. Until all of us are free, none of us are free. Because the thing is, and this I think I mentioned in the previous video, it goes back to how you can be the respectable black, you can, you know, work as hard as you want and get all the way to the top. But there comes a point where this system's gonna hold you back. There comes a point where it's like, at the end of the day, you're still black. You know, it's like, until black people can occupy spaces in mediocrity, the same way that white people can occupy spaces while still remaining mediocre, then the system ain't right yet, you know. There are literally so many issues present today that just make it so clear about how black people in this country are still disadvantaged. Literally, what actually started this whole debate with this friend of mine was because I tweeted that the racial dynamics are really concerning, because even though black people make up a majority of the population, it's clear we're not making the decisions. Because even though, like I was saying, black people have the political power, who is funding them? White people, you know. And so there's only so much you can do if you're relying on someone else's money, you know. Because if someone else is giving you their money, as soon as, if that person says, I don't like you doing this, you stop. I mean, it's the same reason why a lot of people say, like, if you're living at home, you say, once I move out of the house and I'm independent, I'll be able to live like this and that, because while you're still dependent on your parents, because they're the ones paying your bills, because they're the ones putting clothes on your back, food in your stomach, a roof over your head, you almost have no other choice but to obey whatever they say. That being said, I think in conclusion, I am now secure in my identity. I own my story. I recognize that at times I've gotten it wrong. I recognize that, you know, by all means, I'm no victim, you know. By all means, I'm no victim, because I know that at times I did, you know, sort of, I don't want to say see myself as superior, but I feel like that's what happens when you try to, you know, put people on a hierarchy. I feel like that's what happens with certain black elites. They then see themselves above other black people, you know. And at the end of the day, I feel like the most important thing is that I always keep it real. Like, I might not always get it right, but I'm gonna always keep it real. And yeah, I can't believe I've actually been recording for nearly half an hour. My goodness, I feel like I've barely like scratched the surface of what actually I wanted to say, but at the same time I also feel like I articulated myself better than I thought. It's like a weird mix of I did that, but also what is this, honey? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give this video a thumbs up. Also, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you're listening to the podcast, check me out on social media at Simply Sfiso on all platforms. Instagram and Twitter is where I'm most active, and we can have, you know, continue this discussion, continue these conversations. So thank you so much once again. I love you guys so much. Until I see you in the next one. Bye, guys.